Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Look Within. Today's episode is extremely special for me because the guest I have with me today is someone who's played a huge role in shaping my personality during my formative years. She's been a great guide and a mentor. She's someone I have looked up to and has constantly inspired me. She's the sole reason I fell in love with the subject of psychology. She taught us psychology in high school, and she's none other than Anushree Mehta. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. That's such a touching introduction. Raksha was my first batch at Eklavya, and just as they were new to the subject, I was new to the field of education, and they're my guinea pigs. I don't know how it all went, but I think they're doing just fine.
Oh my God, let me tell you, I vividly remember this incident that happened. And I don't know if you remember, ma'am, but the first day of school, I think I joined a couple of months later. I don't know if you recall.
Yes, you
Yeah.
did. We had summer school at that time. So
Yeah.
I think you joined in June, and we'd already done a couple of units in April.
Exactly. Huh. So I remember joining a little late, and by the time I joined, the first unit tests were about to
Yes.
begin. And I was like, and they'd excuse me from writing it. And I told you, ki, ma'am, I'm, excused from it. So just, yeah, whatever. And you told me, ki, no, you can go and give a try. Just give it your best shot. You'll be able to do well. And I thought, theek hai, agar if it's not considered, the marks are not considered, then I might as well just write it. And then I remember doing really well in the test. And you came up to me and you told me that, see, I told you it's fine. You aced it. And I think, so like you mentioned, right, that it was your first year as well, but you made such a huge impact in my life on the first day by pushing me to do it. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I remember the unit test because it was in June, just a couple of days after you joined.
Huh.
And the idea was to just see what the understanding of psychology is amongst these new children who have opted for it. And
Yeah.
that's why I felt in my brief interactions with you, I was pretty convinced that you're going to be just fine. So that's why I coaxed you. I was like, just give it. We'll see. Of course, you were assessed on it, but if I told you you're going to be assessed, you would have been very conscious. So I
Oh.
saw the train of thought when you wrote your responses, and I was not wrong.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very funny because I've realized now that I was assessed on it. I was
Of
told
course,
I
it was
wouldn't.
assessed. Of course, it was a unit test. Of course, it was assessed. Why would we take a test without it being assessed? No, of course, it was assessed, and you did very well.
I'm glad that I'm glad it worked out for the best. So yeah, that's Anushree ma'am for me. She's someone who's constantly pushed me to do my best. And yes, thank you, ma'am, again for being here. And we're going to be talking about social media and mental health today. And I hope you guys take something back from this conversation. And yes, ma'am, do tell me about what do you think are the effects of social media on mental health?
Okay, so I will start with the ill effects first because those are the ones that stand out amongst the other effects. The first ill effect that I feel is very jarring is anxiety and the resultant depression. What
Yes.
happens is that when we expose ourselves to social media, we're looking at only one aspect of someone else's life. Now, there's
Correct.
such an ocean out there about what someone is wearing, what someone is doing, what someone is eating, where someone is vacationing. You can upload any nuance of your life in a second. Now,
Correct.
how convenient is that? There, as a result, the
Hmm.
problem is you are only seeing the part that has been exposed to you. You don't see the other
Hmm.
things that are going on around. The
Correct.
problem begins when you begin to compare your current state with
Hmm.
that what is projected by someone else, right?
Correct.
Now, for example, you have decided that you want to today stay at home,
Hmm.
read a book, watch TV. It's a weekend and it's a
Hmm.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
You, when you do this, you feel like, okay, let me scroll a little bit on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. and then I will do what I want to do.
Correct.
In that scrolling, you see a friend or you see a couple of friends who have gone out to a restaurant to eat, or who've taken like a short getaway holiday somewhere close by, drivable distance. Suddenly, you start feeling like, oh my God, my life is not as exciting as theirs is.
Correct.
So that's when comparison begins.
Hmm.
That's when you start feeling that you're not doing enough to engage yourself or to entertain yourself as compared to what other people are doing in that time frame. There's been a whole term that's coined for it that's called FOMO, right? Like it's fear of
Fear
missing
of
out.
missing out. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically anxiety related to an exciting or an or an interesting event that is happening in someone else's life elsewhere, and you are not able to be a part of it.
True.
Okay,
Yes.
imagine how complex this kind of a comparison can be, because
Exactly.
it's not only FOMO. It leads me to the second point that I was going to mention is there is such a lot of distortion of reality here,
Yes.
right? There is an ideal life and then there is a real life. Now, ideal life is what is projected on social media. Unfortunately, the comparison of that ideal life is to your real
Your
life
life.
in this context. Now, that is where you delineate from what is real, and that is where the problem begins.
That's so insightful. I mean, the way you put it is, I knew this, but the way you kind of put it out there, it's very insightful. Something just clicked in me and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Very true.
So
it's very
I think the idea is to not that I thought of it in this way, but when I am trying to academically put these kinds of emotions or experiences people have when they expose themselves, I'm trying to look at it from an academic point of view, where I'm trying to see what really happens that leads to so many cases of anxiety and depression. Like, that I've worked in the field and I've seen so many preteens and teenagers being affected by it these days. Now, anxiety and depression
very
was
true.
an unheard concept in this age group a couple of years back, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
now with the exposure that they have, there is so much comparison constantly that, the cases of anxiety and depression are rising alarmingly.
No, that's very true. Like you mentioned, that the preteens and teens.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to just, even for us back in school, we never had this. I mean, we were also introduced very later on in life, like probably after 12th, when social media actually kicked in. So nowadays, I see eighth graders, ninth graders being so anxious and kind of, having panic attacks for that matter.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh, yes.
it's so sad and scary at the same time.
It is very sad and scary. You imagine you go to eat an ice cream, you will upload that. You go out with a bunch of friends, you will upload that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but at that age group, I thought there was an age barrier for being on social
On
media.
social
It was
media.
right? I
Yes.
do not think that exists anymore because it's so easy to fake your age. What are they trying? What are they trying to evaluate? How will they evaluate how old you are?
Exactly.
Right?
They just change
You
their
just
date
put
of
a
birth.
different birth date, yeah, and you're fine.
Yeah.
So that is where lack of understanding, because it's preteen, so your prefrontal cortex is still evolving, and so your ability to make rational decisions is still evolving. At that age, when you're exposed to stuff like this, it's very difficult for you to tell yourself that, oh, but I am okay, there's nothing wrong with my life, even though it's different as compared to what someone else is doing.
Exactly.
So that is where the problem lies. The third important thing that I would want to mention here is that there's a center in your brain that is related to reward and appreciation, like
Yes.
pleasure, reward. It leads to the secretion of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. I'm sure we've studied that in
Yeah.
normal psychology, if you recollect, right? It's
Yes.
the same neurotransmitter that is responsible for drug addiction.
Okay.
So the moment you consume or you consume a specific quantity, it results in the secretion of dopamine, right?
Correct.
That makes you feel pleasure, or that makes you feel reward, or any of those positive reinforcers.
Mm-hmm.
Same is the case with social media. So, for example, we'll take a situation where you've posted something, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you get X number of likes, and people
Yeah.
comment, favorably towards it. It's going to make you feel applauded,
Yeah.
basically. And who doesn't like appreciation? We all like appreciation. So
Right.
there's a sort of treadmill, a
Hmm.
hedonistic treadmill, as we call it, of appreciation that's going on here. So
Yes.
you get so used to being appreciated that when there is a lull, where there is
Hmm.
some, you don't have anything to upload, or there's nothing happening that you're doing,
Hmm.
it leads to a downward
Downfall.
flow. Yeah, there's a downfall where you
Hmm.
feel, oh, now, I'm not feeling this way. And so how do I make myself feel this way? And then that is when you start posting things that are very, in my opinion, very mundane, where people,
Hmm.
but this is entirely my opinion. Everyone is free to upload and do whatever they want on social media. But when I see something very mundane, I'm like, why do other people need to know this?
Hmm.
But that's how it functions, and that's the basis of comparison, and that's how other people, measure measure their lives and their standings as
Correct.
compared to how what is uploaded. The classic example was COVID, right? People
Hmm.
had so much time in hand and everyone was home. So then what started happening was you upload that now I am home workouting. Now
I'm
I
cooking
cooked a
this.
very nice dish. Everyone suddenly became a baker, right? Everyone was uploading pictures about the cakes that they bake and the breads that they bake. It's great. It's
I think
that kind of
that was a
creativity.
pro, no, of social media because it worked in our
Yes,
favor. Yeah. Yeah.
it worked in our favor also. I think people found so many activities that they didn't do otherwise. But
Huh.
what I'm trying to point out is, when you try to put up small nuances like, I'm taking a walk in the garden.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. But, it's not that people need to know it. The point that I'm trying to make is, when you had nowhere to go and, no one to meet,
Hmm.
you wanted to post something. So you
Yeah.
started posting things that were a part of your reality context at
That's
that point.
that's very true. It's a vicious cycle, and I think that brings me to the point of seeking validation. I think
Yes.
the present generation is constantly trying to seek validation through social media. Like you said, put up a post. If people like the way I'm looking, only then am I looking good. And
Right.
that shouldn't be the way it is, but unfortunately it's come down to that point, and I guess that's why we're seeing an increase in the cases of anxiety. And funnily, my parents generation think कि हमारे generation में भी the anxiety cases have increased, which they hadn't seen back when they were younger. So
Right.
it's alarming. I mean, it's something that should be addressed and worked upon. I don't know, right now it needs attention, like immediate attention.
Yes. I think you made a very important point about seeking validation. So, like
Hmm.
I was mentioning before, you measure your efficacy or your goodness with the number of likes that you receive. So, the moment
Right.
you have, so it's that circle of post, then receive a reward, feel good, and
Hmm.
then there is a lull. And so you find something to post. So it kind of goes on and on and on. And that's, you know, when people like it, it's you're validated. So
Hmm.
that's how the cycle keeps going on.
True.
Our parents generation is interesting because they're new to this whole ocean of social media. So now they're trying to adapt and experience it at a
Hmm.
whole different age with a whole different perspective. So it's
Correct.
very interesting to see how what social media means to them versus what social media means to us. What
Us.
we
Yeah.
are doing with social media versus what they're doing with social media is very interesting because it's very different, in my
Correct.
opinion. Because I've also seen my parents, when they're new to it, and how they're, they spend time because they're still trying to adapt to, like, oh, there are things you can do with your picture also
Yeah.
before you post it. It's an interesting thing, but let's stick to,
Hmm.
what we're, I mean, the point of this conversation.
Exactly. And
What
I
do you
think
think? What do you think about this?
That's what, ma'am, I think, like I said, it's so alarming that I believe it should kind of be addressed at a school level now. I think it should be introduced in our curriculum where children should be taught how to kind of maintain the balance between social media and the real life. And it's so sad because we didn't have to study all this, but I think the current generation needs to kind of work on that. I mean, what do you think, since you have been in academics, and yeah, what is your take on this?
I think the needs to be addressed are ever evolving, right? When we were growing up, uh, the need of the
Absolutely.
hour was drug addiction and alcohol abuse. And, schools and school authorities felt like those are the needs of the hour and that they need to be addressed.
Correct.
Sexuality was another thing,
Mhm.
because sex education it was always there. But
Yeah.
with changing generations, questions changed, realities changed. And so there was a need to address that because there was so much newness in it,
Mhm.
right? Like this whole LGBT to Q2 plus that
Community.
came about.
Yeah.
Now the
Yeah.
whole understanding of sexuality changed.
Correct.
The point that I'm trying to make is that I think that you've made a very important observation here that schools need to address it because now, along with drugs and alcohol, because that is still there,
Yeah, it still continues.
you
Yeah.
need to also address this issue of social media. Children take to social media much, much sooner than was anticipated, right?
Mm.
The anticipation was maybe somewhere around grade 11 and 12 is when you kind of project your life on social media.
True.
Now, I think children as young as grade 4 and 5 also engage in social media. So,
Very true.
the prudent use of this device
Hmm.
is uh, is very important to address at a school level.
Absolutely. And I think that is where we could help, like the current generation to kind of balance their social media use. But how do you kind of manage it, ma'am? And what do you think the people today who are already, the adults, young adults, what do you think they should kind of do? How do you manage your
Okay,
screen time? We can start with that.
okay, that yes, that is a good question because I don't want to sound holier than thou. I am not free of this sort
Hmm.
of. It's not an addiction, but it's like you know how it is, Raksha. It's very interesting. Earlier on there were so many things to fill your time with,
Yes.
we I don't think that 10 years back we were scrolling on social media as much as we are doing today.
Correct.
Okay, today what happens is between activities, in the lull
Hmm.
time that you have in between, the
Hmm.
most convenient thing to do is scroll on social media
Hmm.
because it's a great way to fill your gap because it's an app on your phone, very convenient to just open and scroll,
Yeah.
right? What I try to do is try to do something else in that lull time, like for example,
Hmm.
if now we spend a lot of time on the screen because of work from home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Look outside the window, look at greenery, because that's a great soother to the eye, also a great way to fill your time.
Yeah.
I would also try to read a book
Hmm.
or read something instead of looking at Instagram. So, unfortunately, reading also now has become on a tablet or an iPad or Kindle. It's that is
True.
also digitalized now.
Yeah.
So, trying to fill your time with anything that interests you other than looking at social media is what I would suggest.
Yeah.
It's a suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not necessarily true, but
Yeah.
anyway you're looking at social media in the rest of the day couple of times a day, you
Hmm.
would rather do some other activity like listen to music, read a book,
Yeah.
do some meditation or yoga if you have 15-20 minutes, because that's a great way to, it's a stress buster, reduces your anxiety, as far as your day is concerned or your activities are concerned. I think those are great ways of filling gaps that we have, which is when we are most likely to use social media. What do you
Absolutely.
do?
And I,
How do you manage your social media
so,
use?
to be very honest, I'm someone who is party to this, where I'm, I need to consciously kind of keep a track of how much I'm
Yes.
using it. And nowadays it's a little better because I'm consciously trying to take a step back and do things that it's funny because I never had to do this before. where I had to kind of consciously keep a track of these things. So it's alarming right now for me because yeah, but it's okay. It's all right. I mean, it's not that it can't be mended. So yeah, what I'm doing right now is, like you said, instead of going through news on the phone, I'd rather pick up the newspaper and read it. So I'm just trying to do all those things now, and hopefully it works. And yes,
That is impressive. If you pick up a newspaper and read it, that's great.
yes, thank you. And yeah, I think that's what, no, now we need to consciously keep a track of the social media usage. And even the phones have come up with the screen time and
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, I think we should make use of that in our favor. And
Yeah.
what
Sometimes
do you think?
I really,
Sorry,
sorry.
yeah.
Sometimes I really feel like पहले हम क्या करते थे? Like, what did we do when we didn't have social media? I mean, what did our day comprise of? I often wonder how I'm sure we had these lulls at that time as well. What did we do? Is there are times when I try to think about that,
Yeah.
and I try to fall back on those things that I did when I didn't have this kind of connectivity and this kind of ease and convenience
Hmm.
for social media. So I
Yes.
think that also helps me, because I remember that yes, sometimes we used to also draw and paint when we
Huh.
had time, or we used to write, some thoughts that come to our mind or anything. So
No, I
there
think
were
that's
things
what,
like
no,
that.
we knew how to amuse ourselves. Sorry, I cut you off.
Exactly.
But
That
yeah,
oh, that's a very nice point that you made. We knew how to amuse ourselves,
yeah.
and there was itna need to project to people
Huh.
how your life is. I don't think this need was so high at
Yeah,
that time.
absolutely. And ma'am, what do you think is the ideal time? I mean, not an ideal time, but how much time do you think should be ideally spent on social media in a day, according to you?
That's a very difficult question, because that can call for a lot of argument. But it depends on what you're doing on social media. In my opinion, if you're just
Hmm.
like scrolling and, just bothered about, you just want to look at what other people are doing, then I think
Yeah.
anything more than 45 minutes to an hour is a lot, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
True. Like
It's
you said, it depends on what you're doing on it, right?
Of course, if you're like a content writer, or if your profession involves being on social media because that's what you do, then that's a whole different world that we are talking about. But if you're just if you're just doing it for looking at what other people are doing, then I think that in fact 45 minutes to an hour also is a lot,
Yes.
because it's a huge chunk of your day. But having said that, let's be real, it
Yeah.
could take up an hour of your time. It's fine.
That's true. And I think, yeah, I think that's
What do you think? What is your opinion on how long you should be on social media? Be
uh
honest, okay?
I think that's what, right now I'm also someone who's actively working on social media through my page. So I'm
Okay.
kind of, but I see that as my work.
No,
And
but that's what I'm saying, that
uh,
is very different, because you're trying to project content
yeah.
and you're trying to work on it. So that's going to be time
Yeah,
consuming.
but the
We're just talking about randomly.
scrolling part, I honestly like side by you with it about not more than 45 minutes, but I'm not doing that. So I should start doing that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
No,
a take
that's
home.
my takeaway, and I definitely should start doing it, and I will. I'm giving, yeah.
I'm just intrigued about something, and I'm going to ask you that.
Yes,
I've
ma'am.
Recently I've seen a lot of people go on a social media detox
Yes.
off social media. Do you
Yeah.
think that works? I'm just very intrigued to know. What do you think?
I think, to be very honest, in my opinion, going on a detox and then coming back and kind of falling back into the same routine of staying hours on social media wouldn't work. Doesn't work for me because I'm just doing the same thing. But yeah, if it works for someone, good enough. If they kind of cut back on the time once they're back, fair. But I don't think it would work for me because I think it's kind of avoiding it and then coming back.
Exactly.
It's escaping from, yeah, probably.
I thought I was the only among the only few people who thought that, just like any other detox,
Yeah.
this detox also, I mean, this is entirely my opinion and the way I see it, that
Yes.
when you go off something completely and then when you come back, you're going to do the same thing,
Hmm.
then that detox did not help. Just like it is for dieting, right? Like you go on a diet and then after like a month you come back and just
Binge
eat everything that you can lay your hands on, then it's not done any good to you. So
Exactly.
yes, if you can go on a detox, but then come back and just kind of monitor it, you know, anything in moderation is good. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think just like that, even social media, I think if in moderation, if used, I think it's good, you know, because like we've not spoken about the positive effects, but it's a great way to connect to people that,
Yeah.
you know, you are not connected to over the phone. It's a great way of knowing what people are doing. There's a lot that you can, you know, you learn about the world by
Yes.
being exposed to it, because I mean, everything is available on the phone now. And,
Yeah.
you know, there is a lot of good that you can expose
No, no
yourself
doubt.
to
No
as well.
doubt. Yes, absolutely. And thanks to social media, we could stay in touch. And we're doing this
Oh, yes,
today. We're doing the podcast.
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
but thank you so much, ma'am. It's been such an insightful conversation as usual with you. And you're so full of ideas. You've always been like that. And personally, it's always so therapeutic for me to talk to you. And thank you so much for giving me your time. And thank you so much for doing this once again.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's entirely my pleasure. So please don't thank me. This is, it's a great forum for me also to share my ideas, because this is my first as well. I have not done this before. So I'm glad that you approached me with this idea.
Yes.
And considering that we're in different time zones, I think we've done a very good job.
Yes. And I mean, to whoever's watching this, we finally made it because we've been discussing this for some time now. And yay, kudos to us.
Thank you so much. I hope we do many more of these in
Yes,
the
I'm
future.
looking forward to it and I would love to. Thank you
Same
once
here.
again for everyone who's watching and listening, and stay tuned for another episode with Anushree ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.